Hello and welcome to this round 11 here at Pro Tour Eldritch Moon. I'm Tim O'Leary, joined with Ian Duke. And Ian, it's going to be a sweat for you because your brother's down there and he's playing against Owen Turtenwald, the one undefeated player in the room. Let's head down to the feature match area and check it out. Hello and welcome to this round 11 of Pro Tour Eldritch Moon and the very last round of draft for our tournament. And our feature match area this round features, well, 7 of the 8 drafters here have not lost in draft at all this weekend. Owen and Turtenwald and Reid Duke, they're our main match. We're going to start off there. Owen, of course, has not lost a single match across the entirety of this weekend, kind of living the dream. He got inducted to the, well, he's now a Hall of Fame elect. He will be inducted in Hawaii. And we saw his draft, a pretty solid blue-white deck, sorry. On the other side of things, well, this is your brother, Ian. Reid Duke, his draft looks to be a hot one. He was sat in between LSV and Owen Turtenwald, but I managed to navigate those waters very strongly, and we'll get a chance to see whether or not he's going to be the first person to knock Owen off what has been an incredible run thus far.
Your turn.
So Owen starting off, as I would imagine he's going to in pretty much every one of these games. Tattered Haunter there, briefly hitting play before Borrowed Malevolence, dealing with that one. Lots of 2-drops from this deck from Owen. That means that he is going to have an aggressive curve most of the time. Dawn-Griff here, the play for him as follow-up, and no third land from Reid.
Yeah, very unfortunate for Reid here, stuck on just 2 swamps. Not only has he missed his 3rd land drop, but also has no access to green mana. Meanwhile, Owen piling on the pressure. We saw Owen's draft earlier in the day. He really prioritized having a good mana curve, picking up 2 drops over ostensibly stronger cards higher up on the curve, and that looks to be really paying off for him right now.
Yeah, those 2 copies of Moorland Haunter, they're interesting because he doesn't have lots of ways of enabling Delirium, so they're really just Grizzly Bears a large proportion of the time, but sometimes that good enough. Pick the Brain here, revealing one of the more powerful cards in Owen's deck in Spell Queller alongside Lunark Mantle and an Island. No big surprises here to see the gold rare being taken away there.
And it's worth mentioning, Tim, the information there actually very valuable for Reid, even if he does end up losing this game. These players, despite being on the same team, have not shared deck lists with each other. So Reid actually didn't even know what colors Owen was playing coming into this match here.
Yeah, Reid will find out, presumably after this draft when they chat, or maybe when he watches the coverage when he gets back home, that Owen did first pick a murder in this draft. I'm sure that Reid not too sad to see that Owen did not stay on the black plan because lots of black cards in his deck. So a ground pounder from Reid here, but very much on the back foot. He's not too close to Delirium just yet, so for now, just a 1-1.
Combat, sure. Flying.
And the Lunark Mantle there being activated in order to create some flight, but murder here, the response from Reid Duke, and that will be enough to take down the Spirit.
Yeah, powerful 3-for-1 here, actually, if this does happen. But no, just the wind brings the creature back to Owen's hand. Still a 3-for-1, I suppose.
So I would say that this is Owen Turtenwald playing kind of a tempo game here. He just wants to pile on pressure early. I mean, he's basically out of cards in hand now, whereas Reid Duke has a lot of cards to work with. But right now, he's the one with the board presence. Reid Duke already on just 10 life, and that Dawn-Griff pecking through in the air pretty reasonably every single turn. It's going to need to be some removal here from Reid Duke if he's going to get back in this, because a 5-turn clock in the air, now shifting to 4 as Reid Duke goes to 8 on those last attacks.
Yes, indeed. Reid looking for either a removal spell or a reach creature. However, we saw Owen's draft earlier today, and he actually prioritized cutting cards like Clip Wings and
yeah, Watcher in the Web was also taken.
Yeah, reach creatures, so denying those from Reid. And yeah, that aggressive start from Owen looked too much for Reid to handle there, especially with the early mana stumblings on Reid's part.
Well, Owen said that he wasn't opposed to potentially making history today, going undefeated for a second day and going into a top 8 to potentially have the perfect game. But we will now go to messages before we bring you back with some more Magic.
Take on the darkness. Eldritch Moon is now available on Magic Online. For more information, visit mtgo.com. In the art of Magic the Gathering Innistrad, terror falls from the skies on blood-spattered wings. These pages, lavishly illustrated with the award-winning art of Magic the Gathering, are your entry into a world beset by terrible evils on all sides and betrayed by the hope it held most dear. On sale now.
Hello and welcome back to this round 11 of Pro Tour Eldritch Moon, and we're going to get a chance for a look in on one of our other matches here. Steve Rubin, the only other player that can upset Seth Manfield in terms of the Player of the Year race. He is playing against Sam Pardee. Both of these players have not lost in Limited just yet. But it looks like right now, Pardee with the run of the cards here, his green-white deck able to establish a little bit of a board presence against Steve Rubin, who's working on just the 3 lands and... well, Terrarian is not on its own going to do too much. I mean, even with a Werewolf to generate a little bit of mana here, he is very much on the back foot. Looking at Rubin's hand, though, it looks like there might be some nice pickups in these coming turns. Morn Willow there at the front of his hand. That one, with Delirium, will mean that he can attack him with haste and make smaller creatures unable to block. And it looks like Arlen Cord also in hand for Steve Rubin. So his deck, not a straightforward 2-color deck at all, choosing to splash for a powerful Planeswalker, even though this turn, leading off with just Olivia's Dragoon and Vessel of Nascency, constructed powerhouse that we've seen in every round of Constructed this tournament, more or less. Sam Pardee here equips his True Faith Sensor to that Ironclad Slayer. That means that it will have Vigilance in addition to a bit of a pump to its power and toughness, and some big swings here. Olivia's Dragoon, the lone block here, and it won't take too much in the way of pump spells for Sam to be able to end the game right here. Steve Rubin dropping to just 2 life here, very much looking to stabilize wherever he can. A Quilled Wolf, the follow-up from Sam Pardee, and a lot of work for Rubin here if he's going to stay in this game. Activating Vessel of Nascency, end of turn, just looking for anything here.
Sure.
Well, by my count, Ian, that's 3 lethal attackers for Sam Pardee next turn. Will he be able to square up this, get the first game win against Steve Rubin? You see that 3 next to his name there, that meaning that he is currently 3rd in the Player of the Year race, our 3rd ranked player. Slightly behind Owen Turtenwald and way behind Seth Manfield. In principle, our Pro Tour winner could pick up the Player of the Year title, but as long as Owen keeps doing what he's doing, he's going to have a tough time of it. So this potentially a critical turn here for Steve Rubin.
Red black. Okay.
Kicks things off by cracking Terrarian and names red black, so he is already tipping to Sam Pardee that there's something else going on with his deck. The pick up there on top, not really doing too much to his decisions.
Yeah. Spirit. Sure. Go ahead.
Well, this line of play does give Steve Rubin the requisite number of blockers, such that if there's nothing from Sam Pardee, it will be enough to win the game.
2 cards. Yep.
Now, Pardee would have loved to have found a 6th land there because his Quilled Wolf, at the moment, a straightforward 2-2, but it does have an activated ability that may have proven relevant. As things stand, though, nothing's holding him back from attacking in here.
Sure. Pass priority. Yep.
A whole mess of blocks, leaving Pardee with very much the stronger board. And Thalia's Lancers here. Does he have a legend to search for? Because ultimately, you often just don't need one. But as it turns out, Odric just a hammer blow here. Odric granting abilities to all of Sam Pardee's creatures. Never even hits play. Sam Pardee picking up the game 1. And we're going to get a chance to head back to our main match. That between Owen Turtenwald and Reid Duke. We saw Turtenwald in game 1, able to just have a super fast start and really punish Reid, who had a slightly patchy draw in terms of mana. I'm guessing that that's kind of where he's going to be looking to go again.
Yeah, now looking at these two decks, Owen's deck chock full of flying creatures and Reid's deck being black-green, a little bit weaker toward flyers in general. So I think Reid's hoping to get sort of an aggressive start here, curving out, so actually he can be on the offensive, or else hoping to find some removal spells that can defend against Owen's potentially aggressive and evasive threats.
An awful mild captive, a nice start for Reid in terms of achieving that. It does mean he's got a bit of a mana boost on top of just simply going first. And Thraben Foulblood's the follow-up there. That, I mean, if he needs to, it can trade with the Mauled Haunter. Alternatively, if he gets Delirium, it becomes a 4-3 with Menace, and that a relatively quick lock. Owen, unafraid, attacks in.
No blocks. 18.
And we see here that he's got plenty going on for the next few turns. Pays 3 for an Exultant Cultist. That the most mana-efficient play available to him this turn. Now, Somberwald Stag from Reid Duke will be a big play as and when he gets it online. And given that he has the mana boost of the Ulfravad Captive he has in play, it may come down as early as this.
Merge.
He also has Distended Mindbender there, emerges from the Thraben Purebloods. Reveals Owen's hand. Now Reid gets to select a card with mana cost 3 or less, and a card with mana cost 4 or more.
Yeah, after this attack on Owen Turtenwald's hand, that lovely game plan that I was talking about mere moments ago, not looking quite so exciting. And let's not forget as well that that Mindbender is easily the largest creature on this board. A big swing here for Reid Duke.
So he'll be able to take Gone Missing out of Owen's hand, and then his choice of Sigardian Priest or Drag Under. Looks like he goes with the Drag Under.
Yeah, blue spells all going away here. And still that Somberwald Stag, along with Rancid Rats in Reid Duke's hand for future turns.
Go.
Sigardian Priest there, the play for Owen Turtenwald.
And this is working out great here for Reid because he can potentially add Somberwald Stag and take out that Sigardian Priest.
Fight.
The Elk there immediately fighting the Priest.
Attack.
And that's great because that'll leave that Distended Distended Mindbender virtually uncontested there.
Yep, Turtenwald taking the first 5. At some point, Exultant Cultist may jump under that bus.
Go.
And for those of you keeping track of Brad Nelson's meteoric rise in the draft world, he has taken game 1 against Michael Madsen, going for a perfect 6-0 in draft in this tournament. And of course, only 8-2 at the moment in total. Certainly a fine performance from Nelson. Bloodbriar and Gloom Widow in hand for Duke. It wasn't possible for Owen Turtenwald to hold back all of the good anti-flyer cards available in green as he was drafting. I believe that Gloom Widow was also in a pack with a few other ways of dealing with flyers. One way or another, green does have the tools to deal with this blue-white deck that's mainly aggressive in the air.
Sure.
Bloodbriar the play for now. Not too many flyers to worry about just yet. And there comes the 3-3. It can only block flyers, but as a 3-3, 4-3 mana, still a fine attacker.
Yeah, actually an excellent card against Owen's deck. Owen has Cards like Dawn Griff.
Go.
Yeah, there we see it right on time. And it looks like this game likely to play out quite a bit longer than the first game. In terms of once the game goes through to the mid and late stages, Ian, do you think that this is one where one particular archetype is likely to be favored?
I think if there's a favorite, it would be Reid's slightly. He's just got bigger creatures and a few more rares that are capable of taking over the game than Owen. That said, Owen's evasive threats continue to carry impact into the later game here. But the way this game is shaping up, I would put Reid squarely in the lead.
Subjugator Angel, an interesting card in hand for Turtenwald. Not currently the mana to be able to cast it, but a 4/4 flyer does match up pretty well against Gloom Widow, and being able to tap down creatures, potentially also allowing some attacks on the ground for Turtenwald.
Yeah, actually, I believe Subjugator Angel is a 4/3 flyer.
I apologize, yes. So a couple of blocks here from Turtenwald. He knows how important that Gloom Widow is, so he's putting two creatures in the way of it here, and no trick from Duke, meaning that that set of blocks actually working out quite well for our number 2 ranked player. Duke, of course, choosing not to kill off the Exultant Cultist, given the option, not wanting to provide additional cards to his opponent. And another big pickup there for Turtenwald. Finds Spell Queller off the top. So a regular 2/3 flyer with flash, certainly not a bad pickup, but when it can also counter one of your opponent's spells, well, that pushes it into the sort of realm that makes it a constructed staple.
So Owen here exiling his Cathar for a spirit token. Didn't find his 6th land for Subjugator Angel. Reid, however, with his 6th land on the previous turn, gives him a 7th mana to flip his Ulvenwald captive here to a 4/6 Ulvenwald Abomination.
We have just heard that Marcio Carvalho forcing a game 3 in his match. Marcio, of course, I believe that he's already locked up Draft Master, but also looking to just, put an exclamation point on that with a 6-0 in draft here at Pro Tour Eldritch Moon. We will hopefully get a chance to see some of that deciding match after this one has completed.
So Reid coming in with a potentially lethal attack here, forcing Owen to make some blocks.
Distended Mindbender has really put the screws on Owen Turtenwald in this game, and at this point it may well be that the Exultant Cultist is jumping under the bus.
Note that Owen has the option to flash in the Spell Queller if he believes that gives him potentially some better blocks. You don't necessarily have to save Spell Queller for responding to a spell. And yeah, sure enough, he gets that into the battlefield before his blocks here. Gives him a little bit better of a setup. Maybe thinking about triple blocking the Distended Mindbender. And yep, sure enough, he goes with that play. Banking on the fact that Reid has no combat tricks, since last time Reid made a big attack, he also didn't have any tricks. Would have had to just draw one. That, combined with the fact that Owen is short on options here, being so far behind this game, just needs to take a chance to get the best block that he can. And Reid choosing not to kill the Exultant Cultist there, denying Owen a card, which could be very important because Owen is looking for that 6th land, but does find it with his draw step there. Could add the Subjugator Angel to the battlefield, but still in rough shape is Owen Turtenwald.
Yeah, Turtenwald here will be playing through not just this turn, but potentially some of the future turns. There's an argument, if he feels that it's actually just not possible for him to win this game, to potentially hide that Subjugator Angel so that in the deciding game it could prove decisive.
Sure, 16. Trigger.
I know, there is the Angel. Very briefly tapping down those rats.
You have no cards.
So Reid Duke there with Digraph Colossus in hand. Just the one zombie in his graveyard thus far. plenty more zombies in his deck, so he will be able to make additional tokens as and when he casts more zombie spells. Right now, the Diagraph Colossus, if he cast it, would come into play with just the 1+1/+1 counter.
Attack.
The ball very much in Reid Duke's court here, able to just sort of keep swinging in. And we can see there the Hall of Famer-elect Owen Turtenwald just weighing up his blocks carefully here.
Okay. You're at 1. 1.
Turtenwald now at just the 1 life, looks on as there's the Diagraph Colossus. 3/3 in play. Exultant Cultist dying, bought Owen an extra card, and he actually now has 2 cards that are potentially very high impact on this board. Plenty of removal available to him all of a sudden as, well, the big draw really there for him. Angelic Purge. There we see it. There's an additional cost, having to sacrifice a permanent. Has to go for the rats here because the skulk on them, making them utterly unblockable for him. But 3 creatures for Reid Duke, all of them lethal. Just the wind in hand for Owen Turtenwald, enough to just barely stay alive here.
No effects.
Duke, without too much action in hand previously, now he has a werewolf to put it into play in post-combat main phase. Every single draw from the top of Owen Turtenwald's deck here needs to be a big one because Reid Duke piling on the pressure here, and a land off the top will not be enough for Owen Turtenwald. For those of you keeping track, Sam Pardee wins his match against Steve Rubin. Steve now at 8-2-1, still in great shape. Sam Pardee now at 9-2.
Transform and go to combat. Sure.
Enough mana available now to Reid Duke to be able to transform immediately, and those attacks enough to make it so that Reid Duke squares up this match. We will see more of that one shortly, but we're going to get a chance to jump across and see a little bit more magic from one of our other tables. So the match that we're going to jump across and get a look at is Michael Madsen against Brad Nelson. Brad going for a perfect 6-0 in draft in this format.
Okay. You're at 18. Yes.
We can see that the red deck's out in force at this table here. Brad Nelson on red-white, a very aggressive plan. Pious Evangel there alongside Conduit of Storms. And with a Lunarch Mantle on that Conduit of Storms, he is potentially threatening a lot of damage here, even though Madsen briefly did manage to get all the way above 20.
Can see lots of cards in the graveyard on each side of the battlefield here. Looks like this game has been quite a slugfest.
Sanitarium Skeleton there. One of those cards that gradually went up in my estimation throughout Shadows over Innistrad drafting. A huge amount of value in being able to get it back each and every turn from the graveyard.
Combat. Okay.
So Nelson here with 5 mana, able to transform that Conduit of Storms, if he so chooses, into Conduit of Emrakul.
Block there. Take forward. Okay.
Likes to hold his mana up for now.
Trigger. So I get a spirit and I gain 2. Yep.
And all sorts of different triggers there. Making an additional spirit with his big spirit there. Also getting some life off that Pious Evangel. Looks like we may have a Smouldering Werewolf in hand for Michael Madsen, though, and that a nice answer to Spirit tokens flying in the air, dealing 1 damage to 2 creatures when it comes into play. And there we see the werewolf shooting down, well, one of Brad Nelson's creatures and making that Evangel a little less likely to want to get involved in fighting. But Galvanic Bombardment able to deal with the werewolf before it can transform, and that a big play from Nelson, leaving Michael Madsen without much of a board to work with here. Nelson already up a game here, and just considering what he wants to do, even just on the board, quite a lot going on, as he can transform that Conduit of Storms if he so chooses. Additionally, that Lunarch Mantle, yes, he can sacrifice a permanent in order to give that Conduit flying. Looks like for now he's choosing to just push through damage where he can, save his permanents.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yep. Jet 3.
Madsen on just 3 life now after that attack.
Gain a life from the spirit.
And yeah, the Cathar creating an additional 1/1 Flying Spirit. This a big problem for Michael Madsen. We may be sitting the death knell in this game here.
Cards in hand. 2. I only used 1 mana.
That Conduit of Emrakul, every time it attacks now, will provide 2 colorless mana to Brad Nelson in his post-combat main phase.
Yeah, the judge was actually just clarifying there, because Brad attacked first and then transformed the conduit, he didn't get the 2 additional mana that the transform side gives, just the 1 as it was in its original form when it attacked.
Yeah, this is one of the most interesting of all of the transform werewolves in Eldritch Moon. I kind of like the fact that you can cast it on turn 3, and then with the mana that it provides, if you wish, you can transform it on the 4th turn. So Madsen here, the reason we see him thinking so hard and long is that, well, basically facing lethal in a whole bunch of different directions. Going to need to be something big here.
Targeting.
Goes for Rise from the Grave. Lots of targets available across both graveyards, of course. Smouldering Werewolf the choice, dealing with one of the 1/1 Flying Spirits.
Pass turn.
And of course, providing a very much needed blocker. With just the 1 red mana up now, though, do we consider shields down enough that Brad Nelson's going to sacrifice a land to his Lunarch Mantle? Yes, we do, and that enough to elicit the handshake. Brad Nelson wins the match 2-0, and we're going to get a chance to jump back to our main match between Owen Turtenwald and Reid Duke. Both of these titans of the game at 1 win thus far. Well, it's Reid Duke with the early play there, getting down his Dryad on the very first turn of the game.
1/19. Go.
And with Ulvenwild Captive to follow up, Duke here, yes, it's a mono green start, but kind of a powerful one, Ian.
Yeah, indeed.
We can see there, looking at his hand, that Foul Orchard, the only source of black mana, you can see why he didn't want to play it early. Plenty going on for him in the first few turns of this game. And additionally, not too much in the way of black cards that he would even look to cast too early. The Foul Orchard, a nice little variation on the original tap duels that we saw in Invasion. I know that these guys came back, slight variation in the names just so that we can potentially see them printed in all sorts of sets going forward.
Yes, indeed. Looks like
Graph
Reid
Mole.
adds a Graph Mole as well as the Foul Orchard.
Unlikely to see quite so many clues in this format as we may have done in the last, but a 2/4 body for 3 already kind of exciting. The Mole Beast there, and if Reid is able to investigate at all, the extra bonus of 3 life, a fairly big one. Turtenwald here having to figure out what he wants to do, because if nothing else, that Graph Mole matches up very, very nicely against basically everything that he has going on here. In the early stages of the game, not able to put out a creature that is particularly substantial in size. Yes, Sigardian Priest will be able to tap down one of Reid's creatures, but Reid has so many creatures going on, and, well, this stag here will be a bit of a problem for Owen, as it represents both a relatively sizable body, but also just a straight-up removal spell here.
So Owen has left up Just the Wind this turn. He's actually able to use Just the Wind to bounce back the creature, so the fight does not happen at all. Essentially trading his Just the Wind for a rebuy on his creature.
Yeah, the fact that Ulven Wild Stag also just a 4/3 means that Reid can't be too unhappy with how that went, though obviously he would have been much happier being able to permanently get rid of the Sigardian Priest that we see recast here by Owen Turtenwald. Just a Plains and a Gone Missing there available for Turtenwald at this point in the game. And meanwhile, Pick the Brains from Reid Duke, timed great here. Only the one target, but he doesn't mind having the information that there's nothing going on for Owen Turtenwald in hand. He just needs to worry about what's on the board. And right now, Reid Duke's board looking superior to that of his friend Owen Turtenwald.
Okay, 11.
Turtenwald dropping to 11 on those attacks and just looking on as Digraph Colossus comes down. Just a 2/2 in this instance, but every zombie played by Reid Duke will generate additional zombie tokens. Exultant Cultist there, the play for Turtenwald.
Reid's and Owen's starting to assemble enough of a board that it gives Reid a little bit of pause here and needs to stop and consider his attacks. Owen potentially making some profitable trades here with the Exultant Cultist and Desperate Sentry, getting some value out of those creatures dying. So Reid just thinking through potential attacks here and just what he's willing to trade off.
It seems likely that we're going to see Sigardian Priest tapping something down here. And Graph Mole choice.
So Reid could attack with his Stag here, but that would offer up the trade where Owen can double block with his Desperate Sentry and Exultant Cultist, giving him a card and a 3/2 Eldrazi. Still could be a decent attack for Reid. He's got such a stronger board presence now that he might just want to just keep up the pressure and keep attacking with what he can. Also a backwoods Survivalist in his hand to follow up the attack post second main phase.
There we see the Survivalists. Duke quite a ways off at Delirium, but even as a 4/3 body, it's certainly not embarrassing. And once the Delirium is enabled, +1/+1 and Trample.
So it looks like
it
no attack
quite the
for
threat.
Reid here. I'm sure what he was thinking was if he trades off the Stag with Owen's two creatures, that leaves Owen with a 3/2 Eldrazi, which matches up really well against the 4/3 backwoods Survivalist. And Reid just opting not to allow that line for Owen there, just biding his time, waiting to get more big creatures onto the battlefield.
Well, Dawn-Griff, the one lone flyer on the battlefield. In principle, Owen Turtenwald now does have an angle of attack that could work for him, though it's looking a little slow in the face of everything that Reid Duke has going on there. Casting Gavany Unhallowed, getting the trigger off Digraph Colossus for a 2/2 zombie token. A big game here for Reid Duke. Just the presence of that Gavany Unhallowed on the board, will that change some of the decision-making for Reid in terms of how much he wants to commit to attacks?
Certainly, for sure now he's a lot more willing to trade off his creatures. He also just has a bigger board in general. I think the reason Reid didn't attack last turn is because he would have really only been able to attack with the Somberwald Stag, but now he has multiple big attackers. So even if Owen makes a fairly favorable trade here, Reid will at least get through a lot of damage to Owen himself. And, you know, Owen's only at 11, so even getting through 4 or 5 damage here is going to put Owen in a pretty tight spot. So now Owen a lot less inclined to make the optimal value trades and now needs to think about his life total as well, Tim.
You can see Reid Duke's stats there. 26 years old, 1 Pro Tour top 8 thus far, but it really doesn't seem too much of a stretch to think that we're going to see plenty more from him in future years, because he's just consistently at the top of the standings in all sorts of events. And at a 9-1 record right now, he's got to be thinking that there's the potential to make top 8 here in Sydney.
Owen is lining up his blocks here. Looks like trying to take out the backwoods survivalist with Dawn Griff and Desperate Sentry.
I'm gonna add 2 counters to Gabby Unhallowed.
And then the Exultant Cultist trading with the Diagraph Colossus. So Owen picks up a 3/2 Eldrazi and draws a card. And takes a couple of damage there as well, knocking him down to 8.
And Gabnion Hallowed going from a serviceable but unexciting 2/4 to a positively scary 4/6 in that set of exchanges. 2 +1/+1 counters as 2 of Reid Duke's creatures die. And worth noting also that with 6 mana plus the Ulvenwald Captive, the 7 mana is available for Reid Duke if he's got absolutely nothing going on to transform his werewolf. Drag under there. The play from Owen Turtenwald, drawing him a card as well as dealing with at least one of the permanents that Reid Duke has going on. But his tempo plan of early 2 drops and beating down not really working out so well here as Reid Duke came prepared.
Yeah, things looking really rough for Owen here. He is able to tap 1 creature with the Sigardian Priest, but I don't think that's going to be enough to stop a big attack from Reid here. Owen should be able to survive this attack with what Reid has on board, but it's going to cost Owen dearly and put him in a really bad position going into the next turn. So we'll see what Reid does attack with. Looks like he comes in with 3 creatures.
Yeah, pretty much the whole team getting stuck in here. Just the Lamholt Pacifist, the Ulvenwald Captive holding back for now. It does have Defender until transformed, and the mana is available that if Reid Duke wants to transform it, well, he can.
And that Unhallowed just keeps growing. Now, of course, the Sigardian Priest can switch over and start tapping the Unhallowed in future turns, but that's going to free up the Graph Mole as well as the Ulvenwald Captive. So Owen staring down quite a lethal board here. He's going to need to pick up something really good this step.
Elusive Tormentor, the card in hand for Duke, but it looks like having passed back without tapped any mana, he's just going to stick with what's on board here. No need to deploy any additional threats just yet.
Well, this will let Reid spend his 7 mana at the end of Owen's turn to transform, freeing up all of his mana for the following turn. So Reid with the commanding board here. We will see that Zombie get tapped down, but that is not going to be enough to stop a huge attack from Reid.
The Gavity Unhallowed, the biggest creature on the board, but wow. Elder Deep Fiend, just a huge, huge play for Owen Turtenwald. This was his first pick from the second pack of the draft, and it really does make a gigantic difference to what he has going on here because we find ourselves with an ambush.
So note that Owen could have played that Elder Deep Fiend pre-combat and just tapped down Reid's creatures, but that's really not going to get him any long-term catch-up in this game. Instead, he plays it after attack, so he has the opportunity to ambush a creature. I believe he's blocking the Graph Mole here.
You go to 2, I'll add a counter. 2.
Turtenwald now on just 2 life. It's going to have to be a great draw here.
Go. Combat. Sure. All right, good games. Good games.
And there the handshake. It turns out that Owen Turtenwald is not bulletproof. Reid Duke, the first person to be able to win a match against him this entire weekend. So each of these players now in, well, fantastic position. Each of them at 10-1, 2 very good friends,
And
sat at
notably,
the top of the standings.
both undefeated except to each other now this tournament.
Yeah, because
Reid's only lost to Owen from earlier in Constructed, and now Owen's only lost to Reid here in Limited.
and that will, of course, mean that when we go back to Constructed, because that was the last round of draft, they know they're not going to have to play each other again. That's already happened yesterday. So exciting times for both those players, but exciting times all around the room. We will head back to the news desk now to find out exactly what's been going on in this, the last draft round here at Pro Tour Eldritch Moon.
Very much to Tim and Ian there with the last round of draft. So, scores on the doors. Two co-leaders, Reid Duke and Owen Turtenwald, are 10-1. They pace the field. They won't play next round, though. They'll play someone further down the standings. Maybe Sam Pardy, who's 9-2. Maybe Brad Nelson, who's 9-2. Still some results coming in. You can see got a few minutes left in the round, and it is lunchtime here. We have a stack of content lined up for you, and we begin by heading out to the floor, because in the last round, Marcio Carvalho of Portugal locked up the draft master slot at the World Championship, and he is waiting out on the floor with our very own Brian David Marshall.
Thanks, Rich. I'm here with Portugal's Marcio Carvalho. He's coming off a 6-0 run here at Pro Tour Eldritch Moon Unlimited, and he is going to be going to the World Championship based on drafting.
Yeah, it's great. Like when I knew that would be like a limited master, a friend of mine told me this is your slot. So 1 year after being the limited master, like it's insane. It means a lot.
If you had to pick one of the formats that you got to draft this year that carried you to this title, is there anyone in particular that stands out for you?
Yeah, Shadows of Innistrad, yeah. Because I 6-0 Shadows, and now this has Shadows too, and I 6-0'd again, so I think that carried me to the Limited Master.
Who did you get your draw against this season? It's so difficult to get a draw in Limited.
Ben Rubin.
Oh, it's actually pretty easy to get a draw in that case.
Yeah, the game, he had 0 cards in the library, and the game ended, so it was a draw.
Okay, so Marcio Carvalho, Limited Master, heading to the World Championship, sending it back to Rich at the news desk.
All right, thank you very much to Brian David Marshall and Marcio Carvalho. The winner of Draft Master, will see him at PAX in Seattle in just a few short weeks' time, and the slots for the World Championship are filling up. A reminder that Owen Turtenwald and Steve Rubin still trying to chase down Seth Manfield. Manfield was 5-5 coming into this round. I think his results still waiting to come in. But Owen Turtenwald 10-1. Steve Rubin lost that round 8-2-1. But as a result of that, his difficulty is that Owen Turtenwald just keeps on winning, and Rubin is a long way adrift of Owen Turtenwald in pro points. So right now, it's all about Owen Turtenwald. Can he get to 12-4? We think that's enough for top 8, most likely. Certainly for someone who'd pace the field to 10-0, their tie-breaks be fantastic. So Owen Turtenwald looking for 2 wins in Constructed this afternoon to make it in to the top 8. Plenty more scores on the doors, lots more to come over lunchtime. We'll go behind the scenes once again in the house with Team Channel Fireball and Ultra Pro. We'll play Bant Company, Beat 'em and Join 'em. And Randy Bueller is going to be here at the news desk. Plenty of good stuff with him coming up. But before that, had a chance, I hope you saw this yesterday, chance to go and visit the good folks inside R&D who put together each Magic set. So yesterday we gave you part 1, so in a strange development, here comes part 2. In this show, we're talking Eldritch Moon's mechanics. We'll find out why things are about to escalate, why chest bursters suddenly seem all warm and cuddly, and why 2 is indeed bigger than 1. Here comes the number science.
So Emerge is a new ability found on Eldritch Moon, some of the larger Eldrazi creatures. It's an ability that lets you cast them even earlier by sacrificing a creature. So now you can pay the mana cost, just like always, cast it. Or if you have a creature to spare, you sacrifice that creature, and now you're paying the Emerge cost, but you also get an additional discount, namely the converted mana cost of the creature you sacrificed. So for example, Wretched Gryff has a mana cost of 7 and an Emerge cost of 5U. So if it's late game, you got 7 mana lying around, cast it like normal, no problem. Now if you want to cast it a little bit ahead of schedule, you sacrifice a creature. Let's say you sacrifice one with converted mana cost 3. Well, now you're paying the Emerge cost, 5U minus 3 is only 2U for Wretched Gryff. It's a great deal. You draw a card and have a nice big flyer on the battlefield.
Emerge offers a lot of really cool and fun gameplay because unlike an ability where if it just said sacrifice a creature, the first thing you look for is what is the smallest, most useful of this creature I can sacrifice this thing. And certainly you can do that to Emerge, and all the Emerge costs are automatically 1 less to account for that if you want to just sack your, your smallest token. But what's more fun is if we give you reasons to sack larger creatures. So when you get an Emerge creature that might cost 7 or 8 mana, well, you can sack a 1-drop. It doesn't really help you out that much. I mean, it helps. But, what if you could sack a 4-drop that had say, a pacifism on it? Well, that's even better. Or what about a creature where, the majority of the mana you paid for it really is its enter the battlefield trigger. It comes into play, you get that enter the battlefield trigger. Now it's just kind of sitting there doing nothing. Well, what if inside of it was a giant monster? That just sounds so much more useful.
So I kind of wanted to push them in different directions, as cards like Distended Mindbender point you towards this kind of mid-range grinding your opponent down style of gameplay, whereas cards like Elder Deep Fiend and Lashweed Lurker are a lot more tempo-oriented and want you to kind of take advantage of the extra time that they buy you, and you're more trading cards for time instead of cards for more cards.
One awesome new weapon the Eldrazi are bringing in Eldritch Moon are meld cards. Now, you've been battling with creatures in Magic for a long time, and they've all had one thing in common. They're a single card. With meld, no longer. Each meld pair is 2 specific cards, for example, Graph Rats and Midnight Scavengers. Now, if they see each other on the battlefield, if you own and control both of them, they're going to exile themselves and then meld. Turn over and it's like a puzzle piece that you're putting together. You get Chittering Host. It enters the battlefield and is completely bonkers. There are 3 specific meld pairs to look for, and look at I don't even know what that is. It's 2 cards. It's crazy.
Suddenly we had transform technology in this block because it's Innistrad. And if you have 2 cards, but now on the back they're 1 card, the game is a lot more okay with it. And everyone said, I don't know, this is scary territory. We know it's real dangerous. But, okay, what happens if you unsummon it? Well, okay, that can be answered. All of those things that were so problematic when it started as 2 permanents sitting there side by side, really once you flipped them over and they became 1, a lot of those started to disappear or could get answers, and it's such a spectacular way to show that Emrakul transformation that we knew from very early on we really wanted to push on this and try to make it happen.
We made the meld cards in design, and when it got handed over to development, there's some skepticism. I mean, we're asking a lot. This is a pretty weird mechanic. But I remember, so Sam Stoddard, who was the lead developer, he and I met just to sort of, as head designer, I always meet to sort of give my impression of stuff. And so I said to Sam, I go, Sam, here's the one thing I know. I go, the meld cards have to stay. You have to do the meld cards. They are the coolest thing in the set. I go, trust me, the audience is going to love this. Whatever you do, figure out a way to keep the meld cards.
So the 3 meld pairs are actually targeted differently. So the Midnight Scavengers and Graph Rats, they are sort of trying to get you to draft them in limited. So if you see one, you might be able to get the other one on a wheel or in the second booster pack. So that's something you should be once in a while attainable while you're playing limited. The Hanweir Garrison and Battlements and Bruna and Gisela are there to try to make your constructed deck stronger with a sweet payoff that you can get if you go deep and try to get both of them on the battlefield.
So Hanweir Battlements and Hanweir Garrison are, I think, really good examples of cards that do stand alone on their own power, but then also give you a really formidable threat if you want to combine them. The land is just great in any deck where you have big creatures, especially, that you want to give haste and surprise attack your opponent out of nowhere. And the creature is just a lot of value attacking and constantly producing more 1/1s. One thing that we did very intentionally with this pair was one of them is a land, which is a less vulnerable type of permanent. So it's easier to assemble these 2 together than it is to put some of them together, because you can play them in sort of whatever order you want. You can play the land out early and it's not at risk of dying and breaking up your combo.
Early on in the concept work for Shadows over Innistrad block, one of our concept artists drew this 2-headed Eldrazi angel thing, and we all kind of went, ugh. And it's one of those sets where when you go, you know, you're on to something. So we saved that. Now, I don't know whether the idea of Bruna and Gisela merging predated that and came together with it nicely, or if it came out of that. But either way, we had this idea that we loved of these two merging. And then when this mechanic came along that is actually about 2 cards becoming one huge creepy Eldrazi card, we thought, okay, that's perfect. That's really exciting to see. And we knew from very early on that the marquee meld card was going to have to be Bruna and Gisela merging into this monstrosity Brizella.
You can see in the design that Gisela is this sort of smaller angel that you might play many copies of in a deck and play her early, and she's very good at attacking and blocking and having a big presence on the board. Whereas Bruna is this more late game card that you might play less copies of in a deck, and it's sort of like a backup plan if they deal with your Gisela. It's like, oh, I had this 4-power flying lifelink first strike, you dealt with it. Well, now later in the game I'm going to play Bruna, bring it back, and meld them into this, as I said, Eldrazi angel monster that just finishes off your opponent.
So you may know about modal spells. These are instants and sorceries, sometimes abilities that have more than one effect that you choose from. You get like a bulleted list and you choose which one you want. With Escalate, you can kick things up 1 or 2 notches. You can pay a little bit extra for your spell, and you can start adding modes, adding effects. So pay the mana cost, you get to choose 1 mode. Pay the mana cost plus the Escalate cost, you get to add a mode. If there's 3 options available, pay the Escalate cost twice plus the mana cost, you can have all 3.
Escalate was a mechanic that we added partway through development as we were looking for a kind of interesting, especially constructed pointing mechanic that was thought-provoking and a little bit more mechanical and a little bit less weird. For people that didn't necessarily buy into the kind of weirdness of meld or the high cost for the emerged creatures, Escalate provided just a space to tell this story of the Gatewatch rising to the occasion, and let us just make kind of these cool, interesting, thought-provoking constructive pointing cards.
The flavor is unlikely alliances of tribes and planeswalkers getting together to fight these Eldrazi horrors that would otherwise wreck the entire plane of Innistrad.
One of the biggest challenges when we decided we were going to go back to Innistrad was living up to the expectations, and especially in regards to the limited environment and the draft, where original Innistrad is heralded as one of the best draft formats of all time. I think with the reception that Shadows over Innistrad has gotten, it's living up. I don't know if I'll ever say anything can compare, but I'm definitely very proud of what we did with Shadows over Innistrad, and I think it's a very worthy successor. And one of the things I'm really excited about for Eldritch Moon is that I do feel like it finishes things out very strongly on a good note and does the whole returning block a lot of good justice.
So there you are, part 2 of Inside R&D. More of that later on as we peel back the curtain of the folks at Wizards of the Coast. Thanks to them for their participation. They give us a lot of valuable time so that they can talk to us and to you about each new set. Joined at the desk by Randy Bueller. Randy, the draft rounds are done. We have a champion of the Draft Master in Marcio Carvalho, but now we turn our attention both to Constructed Master and to the story of the event. So why don't we take a look at our Master scoreboard here at lunchtime on day 2. 5 rounds still to go, and that is the situation right now. Now, in fact, that is not completely updated. We know that Owen Turtenwald is 10-1 and Reid Duke is 10-1. Almost all the other results are in there, so you know that those two are impacted. Those are our 2 co-leaders, Randy.
Yeah, the whole top 8 is insane. It's been true since about halfway through yesterday that any round, if you just cut and said, here's who's coming back Sunday, would have been a super exciting Sunday to look forward to. And yeah, here we are again. The 2 1s from Pod 1 are the most interesting thing I see here. That's Luis picking up a second win, Jacob Wilson picking up a second win. Those are joining Owen Turtenwald as 2-1 from the top pod.
Right.
Where Reid Duke won it.
Yeah, he certainly did. So 2 co-leaders, Owen Turtenwald and Reid Duke. I want to mention Eduardo Sajgalik to you. Now, Pro Tour returned to Ravnica in Seattle a few years ago. He began 2 wins, 3 losses, and a draw. So 7 points after 6 rounds. He didn't lose again until the quarterfinal. He went all the way, last person into the top 8, ran the distance. Yesterday, very sad, 0-3 in draft. Came back, 5-3, perfect record in constructed, and then this morning, learned his lesson from yesterday, 3-0 this morning. He's 8-0, won 8 straight, and he has 1 loss to give, even though his tie breaks aren't great, to potentially get into the top 8. But whatever else, winning 8 games in a row, that's a whole day's worth of Pro Tour play. Not many people can say they've done that, so great stuff.
It's pretty good.
All right, so that's the leaderboard right now. In a little while, we'll go inside the testing house of Channel Fireball and Team Ultra Pro. But first, Randy's still here at the desk. And Randy, you've got some stuff to say, so what's up?
Yeah. I am retiring. This is going to be my last Pro Tour in the coverage booth.
Okay, what prompted that?
I mean, it's been a long, fun run. It's been amazing. I mean, I'm at the point where it's a lot of travel. It's a lot of work to keep up with formats that I can't play in Premier events. So I just figured, I actually did the math on how many events it's been. This is my 72nd Pro Tour. If you add in the Grand Prix, it's my 101st Premier event. It's enough.
We should mention why you can't play in Premier events as well, because a lot of people won't know.
Right. My wife works for Wizards of the Coast. She and I both got jobs there within about 6 months of each other back after I left the Pro Tour. So I left Wizards a couple of years ago, but the fact that she's still there means I count as immediate family of an employee, which means I'm not allowed to play Premier events. I can play like Friday Night Magic level, but nothing with pro points on the line, nothing where to really juice the competitive.
And the thing is, she's not in customer service, she's in R&D, working on every new Magic set, getting the templating right for every new card you see. A lot of the wording on those cards is something that Dell's responsible for.
Yeah, she's the senior editor. She's all the words on all the cards and all the, the packaging and the art, that all kind of goes through her between the brains and R&D and the production team that puts the actual cards together. Okay, so if you're not going to be with us, Boo, at periodic weekends, what are you going to be doing? I've been talking to the folks at Wizards about behind-the-scenes role. So, I mean, I still care tremendously about Magic, about commentary, about the Pro Tour, and, it sounds like we're going to be able to work out a role where I can help make the coverage better and better, but from a behind-the-scenes role and a role that doesn't include actually traveling to the events.
Okay, now in terms of public-facing in front of a camera, you've become known over the last couple of years for fantastic streaming with it's awesome. I mean, I just love all that stuff, right? So what's going to happen to all your streaming activities? Still going?
Absolutely. Yeah,
awesome.
I love producing content for Magic. I think that the Super Leagues and some of the other stuff that I've done is still content. I'll still be producing that stuff. I don't expect any of that to change. And the other truth is, like, I'm probably going to get dragged into a commentary booth at somewhere like an Eternal Weekend or something. Right. Like, I'm pretty sure I will wind up at Eternal Weekend. I mean, it's not like I'm going to disappear or anything, even from commentary, but I'm going to stop traveling to Premier events.
All right, well, we have a few minutes because as the players are on lunch, I say we'll be going inside that testing house in just a few minutes' time, but we have a few moments to reflect. And let's go right back, because I don't think people realize what an utter monster you were as a player in the late 90s. Let's take a look here. We've dug up from the archive. I mean, this was like Spades and archaeologists for this.
Nice.
When is this?
This is the Magic Invitational in Barcelona. So, this is back in the late 90s. You see Olorade with the long hair.
Or just with hair.
Well, sure. You see blonde John Finkel in the back row. A bunch of Hall of Famers. That was good times. Yeah, I mean, I loved playing on the Pro Tour. I mean, I really felt that was just an amazing scene that I stumbled into. I attended one Pro Tour as a fan, then finally qualified. Played for. It was only 12 that I got to play in before I eventually took the job in R&D. But yeah, that was about the peak of my powers, I guess.
And your route in was through college, right? You were at Carnegie Mellon University, which was CMU.
Yeah, well, I moved to Pittsburgh actually to get married to Dell.
Okay.
And just sought out the good Magic players, and I was playing. There was a two-headed giant tournament at a local game store. I was playing with my wife Dell, and we played this guy Eric Lauer, and he was like, "Oh yeah, you should come over to CMU. We play in Sired Hall. Come play with us." And I was then the guy who started driving to Pro Tour qualifiers and essentially dragged Eric onto the Pro Tour. And I mean,
Awesome.
he's now essentially the head developer inside R&D, so giant-brained guy.
Okay, so you win a Pro Tour, you move into R&D. How do you get from there into commentary? How does that work?
Yeah, so my first commentary gig came because Chris Pakula made the top 8 at Worlds in 1998.
Okay.
So the commentary team at that point, there've been live streams since the late 90s. You know, 1997, there were internet broadcasts of Magic Pro Tours. Magic's always been shockingly cutting edge, in my opinion, in terms of getting that sort of esport content out there. And Brian Weissman and Chris Pakula was the team, but Chris made top 8 of Worlds. And so, yeah, Mark Rosewater was the guy running the commentary team. He asked me if I wanted to set in. So Worlds 98, I was in the booth for the very first time. And yeah, it's 72 events since then.
And you've been through a bunch of commentators. We've got a picture here, which I think will amuse a lot of people, fans not just of you, but the other gentleman in the picture. That's Brian Kibler, the Dragon Master.
That is a very young Brian Kibler, a much younger me. God, I'm still wearing a watch. That was a long time ago. Yeah, it was me and Chris Pakula for quite a while. I did Brian Hacker was partnered with me for a while. This is Brian Kibler. At this point, I've already joined Wizards. I'm working at R&D, but I always felt like going to the Pro Tour was my way to stay in touch with the game and sort of see what the pros were doing with the cards that we were making in R&D. So super useful from an R&D perspective. And yeah, Brian and I did a bunch of years together. He's a pretty charismatic guy.
For sure.
Fun hanging out with.
Play the game, see the world. That was the slogan for many years, and it is still true now. Here we all are. There's hundreds of us hanging out in Sydney watching Magic. Of all the places you've been in Magic, is there a country or a place that really stands out to you?
I mean, the exotic ones are fun to brag about, you know, Kuala Lumpur, Australia for that matter, but I mean, the Japan trips are the ones I remember the most. I mean, there's just so many awesome cultural things to do in Japan. Oh, that's the Golden Temple in Kyoto, and Japan's also, I had never eaten sushi until my first trip to Japan.
All right.
It was Jeff Fung, who's actually qualified this weekend, took me to this like conveyor belt sushi place, got me started, and then this is, you know, a couple years in, I remember that sushi bowl. We ate that place out of Otoro. It's sort of one of the coverage stories that gets passed down from year to year.
It is. It's the meat challenge, but
the chefs actually came out as we were leaving. They came out of the kitchen to see who had eaten that much Otoro.
It's very impressive.
God,
Now
you mentioned
the Golden Temple is in Kyoto. Kyoto was also the scene of one of the great moments in Magic coverage. The scene is the top 8 of that Pro Tour. Gabriel Nassif is up against Matteo Orsini-Jones of England. Here's the call from 2009. No audio, Deb? I have no audio. Well, I think the important thing on that would have been the commentary, so we'll see if we can get that for you in a moment. We'll work on that.
Yeah, Nassif's called shot, definitely one of the craziest moments.
Yeah, and it's not often that the players collude with the commentators in a sense that give us such a clear lead.
Nassif was really good at that. Like this, I hope we get the audio too. It's an awesome one. I mean, you can look it up on YouTube. It's definitely one of my favorite calls. Yeah. And yeah, you see Nassif, he draws the card, he draws it face down. Doesn't even look at the card. He's losing, he's up against it, and then he just starts arranging his lands. Do we actually have it, or should
Let's
I
give
keep
it a
going?
whirl. Let's give it a whirl. We'll get fingers crossed, everyone. Here comes Kyoto 2009.
Ultimatum. I think you have more fans than I do. So those can't be tapped anyways.
Wow.
Holy Honolulu, Batman. I'm gonna bring back
Broodmate Dragon?
Broodmate Dragon.
That seems fair.
Yeah. I go back to 9.
Oh my goodness.
Draw 3 cards.
Oh, and Bo, by the way, draw 3 cards. All right, so Nassif gains 5 life up to 9. Orsini-Jones loses one of his Forge Tenders and loses the card in his hand, which was a Path to Exile. Nassif gets a Broodmate Dragon back from his graveyard and gets 3 cards off the top.
Go.
Wow.
So I can tell you that basically we would have burst the internet if we'd shown you 3 seconds earlier, which is where the actual cruel ultimatum strikes. That's the aftermath where the sound levels are just about coherent this way. I mean, it was
not the highest quality audio back in the day.
It was not the highest quality audio back in the day. That That is certainly true.
Nassif was certainly a master showman. I mean, he arranges his land. It's like, here's my cruel ultimatum mana, he says to Matteo Orsini-Jones. And then the card is actually the cruel ultimatum that he needs to come back, win the event.
Right.
Just awesome moment.
With a health warning, if you're wearing headphones, you can watch that whole clip on YouTube. We've got one more still
That's
to
the
come.
one you're going to warn them about the audio on?
I'm sure you can guess what's coming in just a minute. But what will you remember the most about what you've done with coverage? Is it a top deck? Is it a...
Look, there have been some awesome moments. I mean, the Magic has been great. I love being in the booth. I love, trying to find the storylines and sort of helping to translate what's going on. I remember Kai Bude top decking a Morphling that, I feel like I was the only one who got to see, because the Kai Bude moment was amazing because I'm watching, and I've got the booth, I can see the hands. This is a point where we weren't showing hands to the public, and he's playing Tommy Wallamies. It's the finals of Pro Tour New Orleans. It's game 5, and everyone thinks Kai's got it. Wallamies has done nothing. He played, a Call of the Herd for an elephant. He played a second L. He just had these 2 Thurky 3/3s. Kai takes complete control of the game. He's stroke of genius, accumulated knowledge, intuitions for AKs. He's up 7 cards. I can see on my monitor, he's drawn nothing. He's drawn lands. And he's gonna die to this stupid, dorky little elephant. He's gonna lose the Pro Tour despite having complete control of the game. And on the last possible turn, Morphling comes off the top. Probably the best top deck I've ever seen, even though you can't see it from the video because we were not showing the hands at that point.
Right.
But just this amazing top deck, and that's really where Kai became Kai. That was second Pro Tour he wins in a row. Eric Taylor eats his hat. So
that's the Magic
The
side.
Magic has been amazing, but for me, the thing I'm going to remember the most, the thing I'm going to miss the most, it's the people. It's hanging out after the show, doing a booster draft. It's, you, BDM, just everybody that I've had the chance to hang out with over the years and play Magic with over the years. Oh, that's perfect, right?
Just hanging out, having fun, playing the best game in the world.
Best game in the world, no question about it. That's very well said.
All right, well, if that's the thing that you remember the most, there's no doubt what we remember the most, because that is a very special moment. When the time comes, you just have to hope you're in the right place to say the right words in the right order. Buckle up. Here comes the top deck of the century.
You char to the face and knock the top of your deck. That's the play. Craig's down to 3. He's down to 3. He's got 1 draw phase. He's looking at the top. All right. Char. Char you. I like the play. The crowd is into it.
Smash it.
What is on top of the deck? What is on top of the deck? Oh, it's Lightning Helix! Oh my God! Oh my God! Craig Jones is through the finals! Oh my God! Oh, he collapses. Craig Jones is jumping up and down. The crowd here has gone ballistic.
If Ali had attacked with all of his Rusalkas like we initially thought he would, that play would have been impossible.
Wow! Oh, wow!
Should Ali have attacked with all of his Rusalkas?
Does that work? Doesn't Watchwolf just attack back at that point?
He would sack all of his attacks to kill
I'm a bit drained.
First of all, it's not lethal.
Unbelievable!
Unbelievable.
I still get goosebumps.
Yes.
I still
totally.
literally get goosebumps. Ted Knutson racking back in his chair.
And here's
Olivier
the thing.
slump.
If you watch that without sound, 2 people playing Magic, somebody won a game of Magic, they shuffled up their permanents, someone was relieved to win.
Yeah, I hope my enthusiasm for the game, I think comes through. I hope I've made it more fun for people to watch, for people to think about, for people to talk about. I hope I've helped people enjoy these Pro Tour Sundays. It's certainly been a lot of fun for me.
Certainly have for me. I watched for a decade and more before I got to sit next to you. We have one more thing to show you, and this is Randy Buehler's basement. We want to just, and you're thinking, what's in Randy Buehler's basement? Well, we're going to show you.
This is my retirement plan, or maybe my plan for retirement. One of those things, for sure.
That is basically 4 boxes of just about everything ever.
This is what I've accumulated over the years. Every time a set would come out, kind of put one away to draft later.
Well, People are going to be very lucky if they get to sit at that draft table as they work their way through those shelves.
Should be fun.
And we feel extremely lucky to have had you with us for so many years, not just on coverage, but inside R&D, winning Pro Tours. You've done pretty much everything in the game. Maybe you should go and open a store. I don't think you've done that yet.
Not.
Yeah, little collaboration with BDM, maybe.
Well, thank you. It has been a pleasure.
But it's been fantastic. Randy Buehler, Hall of Famer, gentleman, scholar, and he knows more about Magic than most of us ever will. Thank you so much, Randy, for all you've done. And we're going to let you go because you got to get in the booth. We've got some Magic to play.
I do.
Coming right up. So thanks very much to Randy. Meanwhile, let's send you off. Brian David Marshall was off in the testing house with Team Channel Fireball and Team Ultra Pro. And Bank Company was one of the stories coming in. The question was, were people going to beat him or were they going to join him? Well, this lot decided the correct answer was beat him.
Beat them for sure. Join them. To be firmly on the join them team, you have to have more confidence in your play skill than I do. I feel that I get a lot of my edge out of making people play games that they did not come prepared for and that I did come prepared for. That's what I did with Amulet, which was by far my best success on the Pro Tour, and that's what I kind of try to do at every iteration, is to pull the rug out from under my opponent, put them on a setting where they're not sure exactly what's going on, and put them in a position to make a mistake that'll let me leverage, my preparation.
If there's a deck that's going to be this good, I wish it was just off the charts bonkers and everyone was going to play it, and then I could just win very easily.
For me, historically, I've always been the type of person to try to beat the best deck, which has not been a smart decision a lot of the time, but I've always wanted to just, I like it when there's a set meta game and then I try to attack it and do my best to beat it. And, there are rare occasions where if you can't beat them, you join them. And I will do that, but I will fight until, I just am fully convinced that there's no other deck that can beat this deck.
Our goal is to find something that beats it while being okay against the rest of the field. Of course, if you can have a 75% matchup against Bant Company and you're 50-50 against everything else, that's an amazing deck, you know what I mean? You can even be 40 or 30% against some other decks if you're 75% against Bant Company. So I think that's basically the start of our testing, is let's see how we can build something to beat Bant Company. Let's search for that.
I can beat the best deck. I can beat it handily, reliably. I can have a win percentage that is higher than you usually see. But it requires a significant sacrifice against, other good decks. I often feel well, if you know what the best deck is, you should just play it. It's the best deck. It's going to have a good win percentage. I can play well enough, that'll probably be fine. Every time I fall for that, I do horribly. So I think a lot of it is that I spend so much time working on other stuff, while other people who are dedicated to just playing the best deck just play the best deck and get a ton of reps in and have a ton of practice, and I'm just going to be less familiar.
I'm not the greatest technical player, so my personal preference is to find something that actually is off the beaten path, something that people aren't expecting. And I really want to just play decks that people are not gearing their decks towards. So right now people are preparing for Bant Company. It's the big boogeyman of the format. And the way that I approach it is, can I find a deck that can beat Bant Company, but then is also going to be at least reasonable against the field, or have cards that the field is not well prepared for?
As opposed to a more open format, what you have is a very clear requisites for your minimum viable product. You can't be bad against that deck. That would be nonsense. So right away, it's just you start to shear away huge elements of the format that you can't even bother to try doing that stuff, and it really allows you to narrow down and focus into. You start with the things that have game there at all, see if you can improve them, see if you can make them good there, and then move forward.
I need to be emotionally engaged with the deck that I'm playing. I need to care. I need to have something to prove. And with the best deck, I don't have any of that. I'll still try to win Magic because winning Magic is fun, but I'm not going to claw for every possible edge I can get to show that I've done something good. Knowing the best deck, there hasn't been a lot of consideration about yeah, maybe I'll have to play this. I know in the back of my mind I might just have to if I can't find something good, but I'm expecting to find something else I can do.
If we basically bring a new strategy they haven't thought about before, they have to think on their feet, and we have the advantage and we put them on the back foot. So I think bringing in a new strategy, something new to the table, is your best bet, especially early on in a format.
A bit of muscle memory is good. So
generally I've just played whatever the best deck is, and if we can come up with a deck that does well against Bad Company and the rest of the metagame that we, as we expect it, then I'll just play whatever the consensus is for the best deck. Don't really care what side of the coin I end up on, just as long as it's the winning one.
So as you can see, the pairings are posted for the start of the 5 constructed rounds downhill to the finish. That's coming your way. I've been joined by Pro Tour historian Brian David Marshall, and BDM. Sorry to see Randy go.
Oh, absolutely. One of the, the voice of the Pro Tour.
Absolutely.
Just going to be a very different place without him. But Magic he'll still be very involved with Magic and creating great content. So I'm looking forward to that.
For sure. I'm particularly looking forward to all that streaming stuff. I love Vintage Super League. I still know nothing about Vintage, mind you, but I do love watching it. It's great entertainment, great TV. Good job. All right, so let's turn our attention first of all to the state of play here as we come into Constructed, and it is the Constructed Master that takes center stage this afternoon alongside the race for the top 8 here at Pro Tour Eldritch Moon. So why don't we take a look at how things stand in the Constructed Master competition right now. Owen Turtenwald is on 79 match points. Now, that was true coming into the morning. That's true for everyone here. None of this morning's matches count in this competition. They were draft. So now we go from their overnight scores across the 4 Pro Tours of constructed play. Turtenwald by a single point from Oliver to the heir presumptive to Rookie of the Year, 75 points. The struggling Seth Manfield, 6 and 5 right now. Reid Duke, your co-leader, on 10 and 1. Then it's a couple of points further back to Paul Reitzel and Sam Black. And BDM, just 6 points. We should put that in context. There are 15 points available before we reach the finish line in this competition.
Right, five matches left in standard. Each match win is worth as much as 3 points. You can get 1 point for a draw, 0 points for a loss. Sam Black has really got to hope that a lot of Bant Company has bubbled to the top for him.
Or bubbled to the bottom,
or
kind
bubbled
of.
to the bottom,
he's somewhere,
absolutely.
Because he's not right at the top end. That is the other thing. Everyone here is paired by their record, which means Reid Duke battling for top 8 at 10 and 1. He is facing, well, he won't face Owen Turtenwald because they've played in Constructed already, but they are absolutely playing top table Magic. Whereas Sam Black is back in the field a little way, it may well be that is where a lot of the Bank Company lies. So maybe there's hope for Sam yet, but he's on 73 points right now. That's the Constructed Master. What about the World Championship, the slot for Player of the Year? Only 3 people can win it. There's the Hall of Fame slot right now. Luis Scott Vargas on 9 and 2. Reitzel was in decent shape. He was 5 points back on 52. Shota Yasuoka was the other player who was tied with Luis Scott Vargas coming in. But as you can see, Shota Yasuoka down at the bottom of that page, 5 and 6. Luis Scott Vargas is in prime position, BDM, to beat the outstanding Hall of Famer this year.
Yeah, absolutely, and rightfully so. He has just been flat out outstanding this year with 2 Pro Tour top 8s already coming into this event and possibly a 3rd running top 8 if he holds serve for the rest of this tournament.
Okay, so let's go round the regions. Players are shuffling down in the feature match area. Let's go to Asia Pacific if we can. First of all, and we'll show you what's going on there. Yuya Watanabe is currently at 8 and 3. He was in 3rd place coming into this particular race. And then Shuhei Nakamura a little further back. Li Shichan, he was definitely in position to make a run. 7 and 4, he needs to keep on winning. Shota Yasuoka on 5 and 6, struggling again. Kazuyuki Takamura was 4th, but he doesn't need to worry because he's a Pro Tour champion this year, BDM, which means that he's into Worlds already. Ryoichi Tamada will not be coming back from 2 and 6, no longer playing, of course.
Of course. Yuya Watanabe, just worth mentioning. We talked about it with Owen, Hall of Famer elect, right? He was announced that he was elected into the Hall of Fame this weekend, and here he is, trying to claw his way onto the captaincy of the Japanese national team.
Yeah, 18 and 4, the record for the 2 new inductees for the Hall of Fame, the elect. So that's Asia Pacific. Where in the world should we go next? How about Europe? Let's take a look at the European situation for you. And Lucas Blahon, He's on 8-3 right now. Martin Muller led that race on 57 points, 7-4 from Andrea Mengucci, who had a horrible day yesterday. He was very sanguine about it, very calm. He is a terrific player, but the World Magic Cup captain BDM just said, you know what? I thought my draft deck was good, but it was 1-2. I lost a bunch of game 3s, which were tight, and here I am at 1-5. Time to go home.
Yeah, he came back to the tournament with Band Company, a deck he had top-8'd the previous Pro Tour with, but the pairings didn't favor him this time out.
As far as Latin America is concerned, if we take a look at that, Pedro Carvalho is leading the way at 7-4, but this is basically, could anyone make a run to defeat Paolo Vida Dama de Rosa or Thiago Saporito? And in order to do that, Paolo was on 54 points, Thiago Saporito on 47. From there, it was Marcos Paulo de Jesus Freitas who was in 3rd place, and he was right back down on 25 points. So he basically needed to make the top 8. That is not going to happen. We're not quite ready to call it, but with a fair degree of certainty, Paolo Vida Dama de Rosa and Thiago Saporito will be your Latin America representatives.
And if they hold that position, then that also means Paulo will be the Brazilian national champion.
Absolutely right. So what about North America? Well, this is actually in a lot of ways very straightforward because it mirrors the Player of the Year race. There's Owen Turtenwald at 10-1. There's Luis Scott Vargas at 9-2. Steve Rubin 8-2-1. And really the battle here is just a question of whether Owen Turtenwald can overtake Seth Manfield. Seth Manfield at 6-5 just needs to keep on winning in constructed. Yeah, it's going to be a tough one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's interesting here to me is Rietzel clawing his way back into this tournament and, you know, chugging along and doing really well here. And, you know, really, again, we've talked about that. He could, if he can rattle off a couple wins here in standard, he could find himself in a position, another Hall of Famer, putting himself in a position for the top 8.
Right, because
it requires winning from here on out. But
right, I mean, he was 5 points adrift so, you know, but 7-3-1, it's a good record, but we are ready for constructed action. There are 5 rounds to go. Hit it.